I never thought the people who raised me would turn out to be the ones who orchestrated my downfall. I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, in a modest but proud household. My parents were the Southern charm type, polite to strangers, strict at home, and obsessed with appearances. I was the only child, and for the longest time I believed that meant I was their everything. That illusion shattered the moment my father died and the vultures came out. My father passed away quietly in his sleep, heart failure. It was sudden but not unexpected. He'd had complications for years. I was devastated. He was the only one in my family who ever really tried to understand me. My mother, Patricia, was distant, cold. She always treated me like a project that disappointed her. She cried at the funeral, but not once did she look me in the eye. I assumed it was grief. Then came the will, or rather what should have been the will. My father was a methodical man. He had estate plans, savings, trust accounts. We'd spoken briefly when I was 25. He told me that he wanted me to take over his property and keep it in the family. But at the reading, I was blindsided. Everything was left to my cousin, Eric. Eric, the golden boy, the son of my dad's estranged younger brother. The same cousin who dropped out of college twice, wrecked 2 cars my uncle paid for, and hadn't spoken to Dad in nearly 6 years. And suddenly he was inheriting the beach house, the land, the stocks, and the antique bookstore Dad and I ran together before COVID hit. I confronted my mother after the will reading, demanding answers. Her face never flinched. Your father made his decision. It's done. But something about her voice made my skin crawl. Cold. Empty. Final. I didn't sleep that night. I started digging. I knew my dad had an older will from 4 years ago, one that named me as the primary beneficiary. I searched through his office, scoured his locked file cabinet, but it was gone. When I asked my mother where it went, she told me she did a little spring cleaning after he passed and tossed out anything not current. I hired a lawyer. Quietly, we pulled up financial records, compared signatures, traced the timeline. And that's when everything started to stink. My dad's final will was signed 2 weeks before his death, at a time when he was in and out of the hospital, heavily medicated and barely able to walk. The witness signatures? One belonged to a nurse who'd been fired for stealing morphine from the hospital. The other? A notary public who'd filed for bankruptcy and had no physical office. Both had signed dozens of documents in the past for a woman named Patricia, my mother. I was unraveling the noose slowly, thread by thread, and every string led back to her. I confronted her one final time after I got proof that the signature on the will didn't match my father's historical handwriting. I stood in the kitchen, shaking, holding the printed comparison in one hand and the new will in the other. My mother poured herself a glass of iced tea, sat down at the counter, and said, "Do you really want to start a war over something you never earned?" That's when I knew. She did it. She orchestrated the entire thing. I was her only child, and she sold me out for control. She forged the will. She brought Eric into it as a front. Someone she could manipulate, someone who owed her. Eric, the spineless puppet, probably didn't even know the full extent. But she knew. She'd erased my father's legacy for her own control. And here's the thing, I think my father knew. A week before he died, he called me and asked if I still had the keys to the bookstore. I told him yes, but I hadn't been there in months. He said, "You should go. There's something I left for you in the back office." I didn't go. I was busy. He died 5 days later. The next morning, I drove to the bookstore before the locks could be changed. In the safe behind a false wall panel, I found a small envelope labeled in his handwriting, "For Marcus, in case I'm not there to explain it." Inside was a USB drive, a voice recording, and an unfiled copy of the original will. His voice was raspy but calm. "If you're hearing this, your mother got to it first. I didn't trust her near the end. I tried to make things right. You're my son, and I want you to have what's yours. Fight for it. I'm sorry you have to." I sat on that floor for a long time, crying, shaking, numb. I submitted the voice recording and original documents to my lawyer that day. Now we're taking her to court, and I'm not just fighting for the inheritance. I'm fighting for the truth of who my father was. A man who tried to protect his son from a woman he once loved, who grew colder with every year, who let her obsession with control override her love for family. My mother betrayed me. She betrayed my father. And she tried to rewrite the story of who we were. But not anymore. This is war. And I won't stop until the truth is carved into the record forever. Update 1. The court date is set, and Mom's got a snake for a lawyer. Hey everyone. I wasn't planning on posting an update this soon, but things have escalated fast. First off, thanks for all the DMs and support. I didn't expect this many people to relate to my situation, but it's both comforting and tragic to realize how many of us have had to fight the people who were supposed to protect us. Now for the drama, we're officially heading to court. The probate judge has accepted our petition to contest the will based on fraud and undue influence. That means everything my mother has tried to secure, the properties, the investments, the bookstore, everything, is frozen pending the court's decision. You should have seen her face when she got served. I wasn't there, but a neighbor texted me that Patricia was in the middle of having lunch with Eric on the back porch when the server walked right up and dropped the envelope. She apparently asked, "Is this some kind of joke?" And the server just said, "No, ma'am. This is your son finally standing up for himself." She hasn't called, hasn't texted, but she did get herself a new lawyer. And this guy? Pitbull. His name is Dean Caldwell, local legend, known for defending white-collar criminals and sleazy developers. He's expensive, brutal in court, and worst of all, he was my father's lawyer years ago, until Dad fired him for trying to push shady tax shelters. That's right. My mother hired the same man my father fired, and rumor has it they've stayed in touch for years. Which now has me asking, how long has she been planning this? Eric, by the way, has lawyered up too. His attorney reached out with a friendly settlement offer. It was insulting. They offered me $75,000 in exchange for dropping the challenge and avoiding a family scandal. I laughed when I read it. That bookstore alone is worth 10 times that. So now we're prepping for discovery. My lawyer is requesting all email communication between my mother, Eric, and that sketchy notary. We're also going after surveillance footage from the hospital for the day the new will was allegedly signed. If we can prove my dad wasn't mentally competent or physically able to sign anything that day, it's game over. But here's the kicker. Remember that voice memo my dad left on the USB? We've had it analyzed by a forensic audio expert. It's legit. My father's voice, unedited, time-stamped just 5 days before his death. And in it, he specifically says, Patricia can't be trusted with the estate. That's not just a smoking gun, that's a bomb. My lawyer is saving that for court. He calls it the nuke. I'm staying low for now. No contact with Eric. 0 with my mother. I've even started seeing a therapist to deal with the emotional fallout, because as much as I want to win this, it still tears me up inside. This was my mother. The woman who taught me how to tie my shoes. The woman who read bedtime stories to me. How did she become this cold, this calculating? It's like living with a ghost of someone you thought you knew. Trial is still weeks away, but the gloves are off now. She picked this fight. I'm finishing it. Update 2. I found the letter, and everything I feared was true. Hey Reddit. Here's the second update, and I honestly don't even know how to begin because what I found has shaken me in a way that the forged will, the court fight, and even my mother's betrayal didn't. I thought I was prepared. I wasn't. Over the past week, my lawyer and I have been combing through discovery material from my mother's legal team. Most of it is what you'd expect, email threads, bank statements, boring procedural stuff. But then, we found a handwritten letter tucked in a scanned PDF labeled Miscellaneous Documents. No fanfare, no mention of its significance. It was addressed to Dean Caldwell, her lawyer, dated a little over a month before my dad passed. And it was written by my mother. She titled it, Contingency Plan. It was 5 pages long. 5 pages of calculated, ice-cold planning. 5 pages that confirmed this wasn't just a reaction to grief or financial desperation. No, this was premeditated treachery. Here are just a few lines that I'll never be able to scrub out of my head. Alan has been slipping for a while. If things go as expected, we'll need to move fast before Marcus gets too involved. Eric is willing to help. I've promised him the lake house and the store. He understands what's at stake. Marcus doesn't need that kind of money. He never appreciated what we gave him. Dean, if we do this right, it'll look clean. Alan's original will is buried in the safe. I've got it covered. Buried in the safe. She knew. She knew I might come looking for it. And she hid the real will before my father even died. This wasn't just a forged will. It was a full-on coup. Family heist. She looped Eric in. She looped her damn lawyer in. She planned how to make it all look clean. And she genuinely believed that I, her only child, didn't deserve a cent. Not because I was abusive. Not because I'd done anything wrong. Just because she thought I was weak. Disappointing. Unworthy. I sat in my lawyer's office staring at that letter. And for the first time since this all started, I felt pure rage. Not grief. Not heartbreak. Just red-hot, unfiltered fury. And here's the legal twist. Since the letter was voluntarily submitted during discovery, it's now admissible evidence. Her lawyer, the same guy it was addressed to, either missed it or thought we'd overlook it. We won't. It's now Exhibit A. My lawyer nearly fell out of his chair when he read it. His exact words, "Your mother just handed us the case on a silver platter. So here's where we stand now. The original will my father wrote. We're getting it verified again. But this letter practically confirms its validity. The voice memo already backed up our claim. This letter shows premeditated fraud, conspiracy, and a deliberate attempt to disenfranchise me. And just when I thought I couldn't be more disgusted, Eric texted me. After months of silence. One line, "We could have worked something out, man. You didn't have to go nuclear." I didn't respond. He's lucky I didn't drive over to wherever he's hiding and shove a copy of that letter into his spineless face. What kind of people write out their betrayal like it's a shopping list? My mother isn't just greedy. She's strategic. She built this web long before my father's body was cold. And now, it's all unraveling. Next court hearing is in 2 weeks. My lawyer wants to drop the letter on them in person, in front of the judge. He says the impact will be devastating. Can't wait. For now, I'm keeping my head down, staying focused. But I won't lie, this is the most emotionally draining thing I've ever gone through. Imagine finding proof that your own mother planned to erase you from your father's legacy before he was even gone. But as dark as this is, it's also validation. I'm not crazy. I'm not paranoid. I'm the son of a man who trusted me, and the victim of a woman who didn't. Not anymore. I'll update again after the hearing. Let's see what the snake does when she's cornered. Update 3. My mother finally spoke in court, and she set herself on fire. Well, we had the court hearing today, and I can honestly say I've never seen a person detonate their own life in real time quite like my mother did on that stand. Let me walk you through it because this was pure courtroom theater, and somehow also the most emotionally shattering day of my life. We arrived early. My lawyer was calm but intense. He knew this was going to be a pivotal moment. The judge had agreed to hear testimony on the admissibility of certain pieces of evidence, including the letter, the USB recording, and some of the surveillance footage we finally secured from the hospital. My mother came in wearing all black, like she was mourning. She even had a string of pearls on. Eric followed behind her, looking like a kid waiting outside the principal's office, pale and fidgety. Her lawyer, Caldwell, looked nervous for the first time since this all began. The judge asked if either side had evidence they wished to introduce before pretrial motions. My lawyer stood, handed over the original will copy from the bookstore safe, and then, with almost cinematic timing, pulled out a printed version of the handwritten letter my mother had written to Caldwell. The judge raised an eyebrow. Caldwell objected, said it was attorney-client privileged. But my lawyer calmly pointed out that it had been turned over in discovery voluntarily, and thus was no longer protected. Objection overruled. Then came the moment. The judge asked my mother to testify. She got up slowly, took the stand, and for a second, just 1 second, she looked at me. No emotion, just ice. My lawyer questioned her first. He was polite, measured, asked about the timing of the will, asked if she remembered writing that letter. She tried to play it down, said it was a hypothetical draft, something she had scribbled down while grieving. He asked, "Do you usually plan your grieving process around hiding legal documents and bribing cousins?" She got flustered, said, "Of course not." Then he played the voice memo from my dad, the one where he explicitly says, "Patricia can't be trusted with the estate." Everyone in the courtroom went silent. My mother's jaw tightened. The judge leaned forward. My lawyer didn't even ask a question afterward. He just let the silence linger. Then came the cross-examination from Caldwell, her own lawyer. I don't know what their strategy was, but the guy tried to spin the letter as some emotional draft never meant to be read. But get this, he slipped. At one point, while trying to dismiss the letter's importance, he said, "There's no proof she ever acted on the plan outlined in that letter." And just like that, boom, my lawyer jumped up and said, "Your Honor, opposing counsel just referred to the letter as a plan, not a hypothetical." The judge nodded, wrote something down. Caldwell looked like he wanted to vomit. And then came the meltdown. The judge asked my mother directly, "Did you alter, destroy, or hide any version of your late husband's will?" She paused, swallowed, looked at Eric, who was shrinking into his seat. And then she said, "I did what was necessary to protect this family." The judge pressed again. "Is that a yes?" And she said, "No joke. Yes, I removed it, but it was outdated. I had to. That was it." She admitted it, under oath. Her lawyer's face turned white. Eric looked like he'd seen a ghost. I sat there, stunned, numb, half wanting to cry, half wanting to laugh like a maniac. She confessed, in open court. The judge ended the session right after. He said he'd review all the evidence and reconvene in 2 weeks for formal arguments on the validity of the new will. But everyone in that courtroom knew what just happened. The judge saw it. The clerks saw it. The entire damn gallery saw her crumble. This wasn't just a win. This was a confession, a tactical implosion. And yet, when I walked past her leaving the courtroom, she turned to me and said quietly, "You never understood what it meant to carry this family's name." That's the last thing she said before walking out. I don't know what happens next. Technically, this wasn't the final ruling. But this was the moment she slipped, and I have everything I need to bring her down completely. But now I'm left with a new question. When this is over, and I win, what will I have? A bookstore, a beach house, pile of money, and no one left to call family. I'll update again when the next hearing happens. But right now, I'm just trying to breathe through the wreckage. Update 4. My father's business partner testified, and everything finally makes sense. This one's going to be heavy. Not because of courtroom drama or another twist, though there was one, but because I finally got clarity, and it hurt more than the lies. Today was the second to last scheduled hearing. The judge allowed us to call my father's old business partner, Leonard Maddox, as a witness. He and my dad co-owned a real estate investment firm back in the 90s before Dad semi-retired and focused on the bookstore. They were close, or so I thought. I hadn't spoken to Leonard in years. But a few days ago, Leonard contacted my lawyer. Said there were things I should know before this case wraps up. Things about my mother. Leonard took the stand today, looking like someone who hadn't slept in a week. Trembling hands. Worn-down suit. The courtroom was tense. My mother wasn't even looking at him. Eric didn't show up at all. And then Leonard dropped a bombshell. He told the court that my father had become suspicious of Patricia more than 2 years ago. That he'd come to Leonard privately, asking for help securing documents, passwords, and transferring certain assets quietly in case things went sideways at home. Leonard had been helping him behind the scenes, setting up a secondary trust account in my name. Something to make sure I'd be protected, just in case the worst happened. But my dad hadn't finished the setup before he was hospitalized. And here's the part that made my stomach drop. Alan told me, Leonard said, voice breaking, that he believed Patricia had manipulated his medication, that he was forgetting things, feeling foggy. He thought it was early dementia. But he also wondered if she was helping that process along. She was drugging him, or at least he thought she was. The judge immediately paused the testimony and asked for clarification. Was this just speculation? Leonard responded that Alan never accused Patricia outright, but that he was scared. And the scariest part was he had started keeping a voice journal. Not just the USB file we found, dozens of them. Leonard then turned over a second USB, which he'd kept hidden in a safety deposit box at Alan's request. My father's backup. His safety net. My mother had no idea it existed. The court recessed early so the files could be reviewed. But we've already listened to 2 of them, and I can barely type this without shaking. I think she's waiting, watching for when I'm too tired to argue. She wants the bookstore sold. She wants Marcus out of the picture. I can't prove it yet, but if anything happens to me, he needs to know I never stopped loving him. I was trying to protect him. That was his voice. Calm, quiet, scared. He sounded like a man drowning slowly, and no one noticed. My lawyer is having the rest transcribed and entered into evidence. We'll be presenting them at the final hearing. But this isn't about money anymore. It's not about who gets the estate or what house goes to whom. It's about vindication. My father was trying to fight from inside the cage she put him in, and I didn't see it. I was too distant, too distracted, too hopeful that my family could still be something whole. And now, my mother sits in court with dead eyes and folded hands, like none of this matters. But it does. It matters because my father trusted me, even when he knew he was slipping. It matters because she tried to rewrite his entire legacy with lies and forged signatures and cold-blooded strategy. And it matters because I'm going to finish what he started. The judge is giving us one final hearing next week. Final arguments, full evidence review, then the ruling. I'm ready. I'm angry. But more than anything, I'm clear. I know who my father really was. And I know who my mother really became. Final update soon. Final update. The verdict is in, and the legacy is finally mine. This is it. The final chapter. The courtroom was packed today. Not with strangers. Just a few extended family members. Some old neighbors. Even one of the bookstore's former employees who showed up in quiet support. But the air was electric, like everyone was waiting for a verdict on more than just a will. Like we were all waiting to see if truth still matters in a world full of shadows and loopholes. After months of legal warfare, emotional devastation, and revelations I'll never forget, the judge ruled in my favor. The forged will is officially void. The original, unaltered will my father signed 2 years ago, the one naming me as sole executor and heir, has been reinstated. It's over. I own the bookstore. I get the lake house. I receive the investments, the trust, the retirement accounts, everything my father wanted me to have. But more than that, I got the truth. Here's how it went down. My lawyer delivered a final statement that I swear could have been written for a movie. He laid out every piece of evidence. The handwritten letter planning the fraud. The original will my mother tried to bury. The voice memo from Dad. The secondary USB with recordings. The hospital records showing my father's physical inability to sign anything the day the new will was allegedly witnessed. And finally, Leonard's testimony about the growing paranoia and fear my dad expressed in the final months. And then, in the quietest courtroom I've ever sat in, the judge looked directly at my mother and asked if she had anything left to say. She stood, adjusted her blazer, and said, with no emotion at all, "I did what I believed was right. You're all welcome to your opinions." That was it. No apology. No admission. Just detachment. Like a boardroom statement. Like none of this had ever touched her soul. The judge's response? What you did was not only wrong. It was calculated, manipulative, and cruel. You didn't just defraud a will. You tried to erase a man's wishes. And you failed. He then signed the ruling. Gavel came down. And just like that, it was done. Eric didn't show up. He sent a signed affidavit agreeing to relinquish any claims in exchange for immunity from further legal action. My lawyer said we could have gone after him harder. But honestly, I don't care. Let him crawl back to whatever rock he hides under. He has to live with what he did. After the verdict, I walked out of the courthouse alone. I didn't feel victorious. I felt still. like a storm finally stopped after months of tearing through everything I loved. The bookstore is mine now. I'm already planning renovations. Not to change what it was, but to restore what it stood for. I want to reintroduce Saturday readings, community nights, even start a scholarship in my father's name for kids who want to become writers. The lake house? I haven't been back since the funeral, but I'll go soon. My therapist says I should reclaim it, make peace with the space. And my mother? I haven't spoken to her since the ruling. She walked out of court, climbed into her lawyer's Blacktown car, and never looked back. Maybe one day she'll regret this. Maybe she won't. That's no longer my burden to carry. To all of you who followed this journey, offered words of encouragement, messages of solidarity, thank you. Reddit's strange like that. You bare your soul to strangers and somehow feel more heard than you ever did in your own home. This was never just a fight over inheritance. It was about reclaiming a father's voice, reclaiming the truth, and choosing to be the kind of man he hoped I would become, even when the people who raised me tried to break that part of me. It's over. I survived, and I'm still standing. Thank you for walking this road with me. Thank you for stepping into another tale with me. Every story unlocks a different world, and I'm glad you were here for the journey. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my stories Unchained, where every ending is just the beginning of another adventure. Until next time, keep your mind open and your heart ready for the next story, Unchained.